He thought he was just feeding a hungry child. But by sunrise, 200 warriors were waiting outside his barn. The night had fallen silent across the wide, empty plains. Only the whisper of wind brushed against the dry grass, and the creak of an old windmill echoed in the distance. Jack Dalton, a weathered cowboy with dust on his hat and years of loneliness in his eyes, sat by a dying campfire. His horse grazed nearby, and the smell of smoke and beans filled the air. He had been alone for too long, ever since the border war had taken his family and left him with nothing but scars and silence. Then through that still night came a sound, a faint, trembling cry. Jack rose instantly, his hand on his revolver. The cry came again, softer this time. He grabbed his lantern and followed the sound past the barn fence. There in the moonlight he saw him, a small native boy, no older than 10, barefoot and shivering, his clothes torn and covered in dirt. Jack lowered his gun. "Hey there, kid. You lost?" The boy didn't answer, just looked up with hungry, desperate eyes. Jack sighed, took off his coat and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. "Come on, son. Let's get you fed before the coyotes do." He didn't know it yet, but by helping that child, Jack had just invited the storm of his life. Inside the small wooden cabin, the boy devoured stew and bread like he hadn't eaten in days. Jack sat across from him, studying the boy carefully. "What's your name?" Jack asked. The boy hesitated. "Noka," he whispered. Jack smiled faintly. "All right, Noka, you're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you." But even as the boy ate, his eyes kept darting to the window, like he was afraid of something out there. Jack leaned back in his chair. "You running from someone?" The boy froze, his spoon trembling in his hand. "They'll come," he whispered. "Who will come?" Jack asked. Noka looked up with tearful eyes. "My people. They'll think you took me." Jack frowned. "Took you?" "Boy, I just gave you food." But the fear in Noka's eyes didn't fade. At sunrise, the plains stretched wide and golden. Jack went outside to fetch water and froze. Hoofprints, dozens of them, deep, fresh, leading straight toward the hills. He crouched down, touched the ground and muttered, "They're close." Inside, Noka stood at the door, clutching Jack's coat. "They're coming, aren't they?" Jack looked up at him. "Yeah, I reckon they are." The boy lowered his head. "My father is the chief. He'll think you kidnapped me." Jack's jaw tightened. "Well, ain't that just fine?" He looked toward the rising sun. The wind carried a faint echo, the beat of drums rolling from the valley. "Guess we're not alone anymore," he said quietly. By noon, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon, one lone rider galloping hard. It was Sheriff Cole, an old friend of Jack's from town. "Jack!" he yelled, sliding off his horse. "You need to get out of here now!" Jack frowned. "What is wrong?" "Word is the Apache tribe is on the move. 200 of them. They're looking for a missing boy." Jack's heart sank. "A boy named Noka?" The sheriff's eyes widened. "So you do got him?" "Jack, if they find that kid here, they'll burn this place to the ground." Jack looked toward the cabin window, where the small boy watched silently. "I ain't handing him over to be killed," Jack said firmly. "Then God help you, friend," the sheriff said, mounting his horse again. "They'll be here by morning." As the sheriff rode away, the weight of those words sank deep. 200 warriors, one old cowboy, and a boy caught in between. As the sun went down, the land turned red and quiet. Jack moved through his cabin, loading his rifle, checking his revolver, and locking every door and window. The boy sat near the fire, watching him. "You'll fight them?" he asked softly. Jack nodded. "If I have to." Noka looked down. "They'll kill you." Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I ain't gonna let 'em think kindness is a crime." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "Why did you help me?" Jack stopped and looked at him. "Because once someone helped me when I was lost too." Outside, thunder rumbled across the plains, but it wasn't from the sky. It was drums, dozens of them, getting closer. Jack whispered, "It's time." When dawn broke, the world was on fire. The horizon glowed orange, and dust rose from the valley as hundreds of Apache warriors rode in. forming a ring around Jack's barn. At their front stood Chief Tahoma, tall, painted in red and black, his eyes burning with fury. "Return the boy," he shouted. "You have no right to keep him." Jack stepped out of the barn, rifle in hand, Noka standing behind him. "I didn't take him," Jack said firmly. "He came to me hungry, scared. I fed him. That's all." "You lie!" the chief roared. "You kidnapped the son of our tribe." Jack lowered his gun. "If I wanted a fight, I'd have started one." "I gave him food, not chains." The warriors murmured among themselves. Then, before anyone could stop him, Noka ran forward. "Father, stop," he cried. "He saved me. I was lost. I was hungry. He gave me food when no one else did." The chief froze. His eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You ran from your people," he said coldly. "I ran from hate," Noka answered. "He showed me kindness." A long silence fell over the valley. The wind carried dust and tension between them. Jack slowly set his rifle down and walked forward, unarmed. "I ain't your enemy, Chief," he said. "Your boy came to me half dead. Any decent man would have done the same." The chief stared at him, unmoving. Then, after a long pause, he dismounted his horse and walked up to Jack. "You are brave," he said quietly. "Or foolish. Maybe both," Jack replied with a half-smile. The chief looked back at his warriors and raised his hand. "No blood will be spilled today. This man fed my son. His courage honors him." The warriors lowered their weapons. Jack exhaled slowly. The boy ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. The chief placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You will return home, but you will never forget this man's kindness." When the warriors finally rode away, the valley returned to silence. The sun climbed higher, golden light spilling over the ranch. Jack stood there, tired but smiling. The boy turned to look back one last time. "Will I see you again?" he asked. Jack knelt down and ruffled his hair. "If the wind ever brings you this way, I'll have a plate waiting." The boy smiled and ran after his father. Jack watched them disappear into the horizon, then looked at the empty plate still sitting on the porch. He muttered to himself, "Ain't about the food, is it? It's about doing what's right, even when the world says don't." As the wind blew through the dry grass and the sun bathed the land in gold, Jack Dalton smiled, knowing that in a world full of hate and war, a single act of kindness had built a bridge no weapon ever could.